right, so today we'll show how to take an existing document, Word document, and convert it to PDF, and then from there, how to create a PDF form fillable. So in this example, we have an OBG family history form. It's in Word document. Recommendation is to do the Word document first, then make it into a PDF. So once you have the Word document, you can either save it as a PDF or you can print it as a PDF. If you go to File right here, it says Save as Adobe PDF. Click on that. I'm just going to save it to my download file folder. Name an example here. And then it will then convert for you automatically. If this doesn't work, you can also use Adobe Pro, and you can convert it there as well. From here, you're going to actually have to then have Adobe Pro to convert this into a form fillable. So to do that, you click on Tools, click on Edit, which is over here. So if you click Create, that will actually create a form from scratch, meaning like it's a blank sheet of paper. If you click Edit, it will actually edit what you have in front of you here, which is what you want to do. Click on Edit. There are no fields right now in the PDF. Well, that makes sense since there are no forms you just made. Click Yes. What Adobe has done is they went ahead and filled where they felt there would be form fillable blanks. What that means is you can see here as patient name, date of birth, name of physician, and whatnot. In this box here, this pop-up box, you're in editing mode. There are two main modes. You have editing mode and you have view mode. In editing mode, you can make more boxes as well as you can actually create different boxes. Okay. So right now, as is, you can probably start at putting things in here. So if you just save it, for example, let's say I close form editing, you will be able to see anything that's highlighted is where you can actually type things in. And if you notice, it's all independent. So if you type here, it doesn't show up here. And that's important later on, which I'll show you why. But the logic behind creating a form fillable is not consistent, meaning that it's not going to be able to capture every single thing that you want. So for example, you can see they have checkboxes here that are missing, more checkboxes. Let's say, for example, you have a line that's missing. You have to create that box as well. Here, it didn't realize, Adobe didn't realize that you want to put something here as well. So there's quite a bit of things that are missing. So you can see, and there's also date and whatnot. Okay. So what I'll recommend here is now that we've already have this, we're going to go ahead and save it. So now at least the basic is there as form fillable. Now, in order to get more forms, you're going to have to go back to Edit. And I'm just going to walk through the fields here. Top to bottom, you have Add New Field. You go ahead and click on that little.
Okay, so Derek, to get to this tab, this list here, that was under Forms?
Yeah, so when you're here, I'll go ahead and take a step back. Good question. So under Tools, so this is what it looks like normally. So if you click on Tools here, it's going to show you the tool pane. Under the tool pane, you have multiple options. One of the options, I'll go through each one actually. You have content editing, where you can actually edit the content here, which is not useful for us right now. You have pages, where we can actually add more pages, or let's say this was scanned to us and we want to rotate for some reason. We can do that. Let's say we have multiple PDFs. Let's say for OBG, we have a medical history form and we have a surgical intake form. And you want to combine them into one form. You'll use this tool here, Insert Trial. And that's what this page tool is used for. You have interactive objects where you can add things in there and then program it. So for example, if you have the correct programming, you can add something here that says email, and if you email, you can actually add videos and sound to it. For our purposes, we never use it. The most important one that we use is called Forms. You can see here. This is where you would click to edit the form, which is what we did, or you can click Create. In this situation, we went ahead and we edited this form. Other ones that we have are action wizards, which again, we don't really use. We normally use it if you want to create different types of documents. Text recognition. This is when you want to do something called OCR, optical character recognition. Again, not really useful in this situation since you don't need to read this per se and type it out. And then there's protection where you can encrypt it. for our purposes, we really don't use that either. So under form, we're going to go ahead and click edit, and it'll highlight everything here that's what we call an editable field. Over here, under fields, you will see that you can sort by all kinds of things. I like to do it by tab order. You can see by pages what it all looks like. So you actually can click on each field that's named. You can see patient name, and then if you click tab, go back one more time. Click tab or date of birth, you can actually see that it actually will go to each corresponding one, which is good. So from here, you can actually edit each individual field in and of itself. So for example, let's say under patient name, I want to make it larger. You go ahead and you can make this field large too for you to see. You can actually click on this little corner or any of these dots. You actually make it larger or smaller. Let's say you want to make it larger. You make it smaller. You can move it around. So you can move this around. Let's say it's not perfectly aligned. Or let's say, I really want it to be above and I'm going to put something else. So let's say Universal Health Specialist, I want to put polymorph right underneath it. I could actually make this flush here and I can actually put polymorph here. And I'll show you that in a little bit. So normally what I like to do is I recommend making it large enough so you can see what you want to do. Now Adobe's smart enough to try to make things flush. So you can see that this line, the length of this line is the same length of the box. If for some reason it's not, or let's say you don't want it to be that way, you can definitely change it. Again, you just have to click drag. If it's too much, not correct, if you press Control Z, shortcut, or you can also press edit as an undo or redo. Again, you can see here, Control Z versus Shift Control Z. A couple other shortcuts to keep in mind. Control X for copy, Control C for copy. Paste, once you paste something, it'll be no longer grayed out, and I'll say Control V, Control A for select all, and then Shift Control A for deselect all. From here, let's say you want to modify the box in and of itself. You right click and you see properties. This is important because this is how you can control each individual box characteristic. So let's say, for example, under patient name, you want it to look a certain way. Let's say I want it to be a fill color. So let's say I want it so that it's going to be handwritten or it's going to be typed up by the nursing staff, and you want it to be grayed out. So that's going to be the signal to the faculty or to the patient or to the staff not to fill it out for whatever reason. You can actually change the fill color that way. Normally we put no color because when you print it, you want it to be white because you're printing on white paper. The other thing you can do here, you have font size. Your font size currently is called automatic, meaning whatever you type here, it's going to fill the space as best as possible, and that's it. You could make it 10, 12, 14, whatever it is. It's up to you how you want to do it. You can also change the text color. If you're printing black and white, just leave it as black, easiest way to go, as well as the font. The font for Adobe, for some reason, defaults to Helvetica. It seems to work, it's fine. Position-wise, you can see how it's positioned. You can change things if you know what your height's supposed to be. If not, then I would not recommend changing it. You can also do here under options, if it's going to be a long text, let's say you wanted to type out their medical history or you wanted to write their chief complaint while they're here, and it's going to be more than say a few words, you can actually click on multi-line, which allows you to put multiple things in here. You can also use a default value, for example, to write please describe reason for visit. And then when you print the form, it will be there automatically. Up to you. Normally we don't like to do that. Under actions, you can see what you want to do. So mouse up, mouse down, format, validate, calculate. These are all fields again that we don't really use. You can use them if you are creating formulas, but most times we're not. So not a problem on that one as well. So that's how you would use this side. The name is super important because anything with this name or this name and tooltip will actually have the same format. So for example, let's say you want multiple names to show up. So let's say I want this patient name to show up, and let's say move this down here real quick. I'm going to Control C, I'm going to Control V. You can see here, I'm going to make it a little smaller. You can see here now I have two patient names. So whatever I type here will automatically show here. This over here. I'm going to close the form editor just to show what it looks like. So let's say we put test name, it shows up in both places. And it shows up with the same type of format. So that's really important to know because this will be a time saver. So what will happen is, let's say, for example, you want to have every single page have the patient name. Well, instead of you need to type it 3 times, 4 times, however, you can just have it programmed so you type it once here, and then it'll show up on every subsequent form or subsequent place that you want. Okay. And then let me go back, click edit, and I'll go ahead and undo that. And one more time. Oh, I guess I did multiple times. There we go. Okay. So that's how I would probably start with the basics. Make sure you understand that. From there, the next question probably is going to be, well, I want to put in, for example, these checkboxes. You can definitely do that. So let's go and take a close look at the tools, the tabs. Right here, you have Add New Field. In the triangle, you can click on here. You would see that there's text field, checkbox, radio button, list box, drop down, button, digit signature, and barcode. For our purposes, I recommend only using text field, which is what these are, checkboxes for these, or radio buttons. You can use radio buttons too, but I prefer checkbox just because it's easier to read. Keep in mind that you want things to be large enough because you will have to scan it eventually, and if you use a radio button and it's not really clear, that could cause problems later on. Sure. So let's say, for example, I want to do checkbox. I'm going to click checkbox, and you can see here, I have a little, now I have a little box right here, and I can put it wherever I want, and it's called checkbox 1. Let me make it a little larger so you guys can see. So you can see here that it's not quite as flush with it. You can see it's quite large. Yeah. You could leave it that way if you want. You could also go to properties, and under appearance, you can just make sure there's no border color and make sure the fill color is no color here. And then when you check it, it'll look like it's right there. If we do fill color white, it's actually going to mask the box, which is actually okay. And then I'll show you why stylistically that's actually better. Click close form. Okay. So now when I click on it, it looks like that. When you print it, it's actually not going to show this. It shouldn't show this purple, right? It'll just show the check mark. So it makes it a lot cleaner for you. Now compare that to, let's say we added the checkbox. We did it here, and then let's say I go to properties, and I put a black, and I put no color, and I close the field. You can see here already, it's just not that aesthetically pleasing, because you can see behind it. So if you want to put a field and you want it so the text outside can show through, then you would put no color. If you want to obscure it, or you're okay with obscuring it, then your background color should be white. Just again, so that it's super clear. Now, one of the things is we're going to go back here. I'm going to go ahead and undo that because I want no border color, no color, and I want the fill color to be white. That way, regardless of what's behind it, it's going to be fine. What I like to do also is, like, normally you see how it's you want to have it kind of parallel, so that way it doesn't look off. Part of it is artistic talent, so to speak. Let me make it a little smaller. So now you see it, you can actually see if it looks good or not. And it looks pretty good. And then also you have a text over here. Okay. So you repeat that throughout every time you want a checkbox and you put it in. One of the questions that could come up is, could you just Control C and then Control V, and then you can put it here? Well, the problem is that now if you checkbox this will checkbox automatically. Let me show you that real quick. See, it's tied together. Because it's tied together, it's going to be really frustrating for the patient or for the end user to do that. So I recommend don't do that. Let me go back and edit. I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. Actually, if I just delete it. So you have to repeat this throughout the entire transaction. As you get to here, these are smaller boxes. Again, you're just going to have to put the checkbox in. And it's going to be tedious because you have to put every single checkbox independent, because again, you cannot have it set up so that it's tied together. That's right, because if you put no here, you can have a yes here. So you don't want no, and then it automatically defaults.
Right, yeah.
To make it easier, there's no logic per se where you can click no and then yes won't appear unless you do radio buttons. But I think checkboxes just, again, from a user standpoint, seem to be just easier to implement. And then you can see here that, again, lots of checkboxes. In here, you could use radio buttons. I'll show you what that looks like since I've mentioned it before. Let's do 2, and you can get a feel of it. Another red button. And you can resize it later on to fit your need. Obviously, I'm going to have to do that. And one more. And actually, one more. Let's just go for it. One more right here, too. Okay. And then now, what we're going to do now is we're going to click Close Form Editing. And then you can see here, you can just click, 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 click. And you can see here that it becomes a choice.
Right.
Because it's
whereas the checkbox, you could click all of them.
Correct. Right. So, I mean, in this particular situation, this may not be appropriate because a woman could have heavy, light cramps or a clot. They could have all of them, none of them, whatever the case is. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's why from a stylistic standpoint, my impression is to use checkboxes more than these fields. The problem, though, is once you already put them in place, you can't quite undo them. So for the patient, once they download this, it's not like they can't force the issue. They can't click heavy and light. They're forced to a choice. So giving them more choice is probably better, and then go ahead and clarify. So for example, let's say we add a checkbox here, and we put one here, and we put another checkbox here. And maybe, you know, for some reason they put both, and it's because they have emergencies, and it's sometimes heavy and sometimes light. And then the gynecologist can then ask, oh, you know, I know I should put heavy and light. Is there, can you explain more about that? And you can look at time and whatnot. So that's kind of how you would design this as you kind of go along.
Right.
If you want to point out, though, as you.
Yeah, that's the worst part about filling out forms online is oftentimes when you know you should make multiple choices, you should make, you know, check multiple and you can't explain. So it's, Yeah,
it's quite hard. So if you notice over here, actually you can see like as I'm adding these checkboxes, they actually are being added here. There. See how the checkbox works? So actually I can go through the list and I can see where each checkbox is, and I can name it. So for example, this is named history of thyroid disease. So if I right click here, I can see history of thyroid disease. So I can change that if I want to, but when you look over here, you can actually see all the different naming of each box, which is great. So you can name these checkboxes too. So for example, let's say I wanted to put a checkbox here. Instead of calling it checkbox, what is it, 6 or 7? Let's see. 6. I can name it psych. I can name it checkbox psych. You don't have to do that, but it may make it easier for you to put it together. So different ways. And under this menu item here, you can actually sort by different ways, either alphabetical or tab order. I like tab order because as you go through this, you're going to click tab and it's going to go into each one. So conceptually, again, for the patient experience or the end user experience, it's much easier to have it by tab order because then you'll know what's coming next versus alphabetical, which is not as clear. So that's how you actually will complete this type of form, where it's a lot cleaner. And so let me show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, so what you're looking at now should be the final product. So what you're looking for in the final product is every field that's possible to be completed by the patient is there. And so we took the prior form that we used and we transformed it by filling every area, and we did every checkbox and we renamed it, and now this is what you see in front of you. So if you notice, every checkbox has something there. I do want to point out though, after a while, it can get confusing because again, you're using checkbox 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of the tips I have is that for my checkboxes, I actually start relabeling them. So you may notice like 112 versus 122. And the reason is because as long as you change it, it actually will be a different checkbox. So instead of putting allergy and reaction checkbox, surgery checkbox, Gardasil checkbox, I just renamed it under checkbox, 1 or 11, 11, 12, 11, 13, whatever else, just so that it's easy to keep track of. The tab order may still be the same, but at least the naming convention may be a little easier instead of trying to rename everything. You can do it either way, but that's one of my tips to make it a little easier. The other thing I like to do is, you see what I just did there? I noticed that something was not aligned. So I like to actually make it large enough where I can actually see if it's like not aligned or not. And if you want to move it up, you just press an arrow. If you want to move it just a little bit, press Control. You can see how it expands. So, as you play around with this and get more familiar, you'll realize that using arrows, using Control, using Shift will cause different reactions. And let me show you what else we did. So you just scroll down, you can see all the different checkboxes. So over here, what I would do is I would actually try to make it more flush. Let me try again. Sometimes you can't. And it's just the way it is. So if it's not as flush, you can try to either expand it, or what you can do is you can also try to reshape it. So let's say you have to make it larger or smaller, just so it looks a little cleaner. The other reason why I like not having borders is because not everyone can check everything, so it won't be as obvious that things are not aligned. Okay. I like to go through each line and make sure there's any spots that should be there, that it's there, that it has something in it. If you don't do it that way, then it gets a little easy to miss things. Just because in this particular form, there's a lot of boxes that have to be entered. You can tell by the right-hand side. There's a lot of different ones that were there. And then once you're done, you save it, and I have to close the form. If there's a option, I actually like to type things in randomly. So like test, name, UHP, and I do this mainly just to make sure that nothing is sticking to another format. Here, and I just like to tab 2 just to make sure chronologically it works. I also like to give it to another person to play around with it to make sure. Sometimes I'll click all the checkboxes just to see like what the alignment looks like. You can also print it on paper if you have that ability or luxury to do it. If you don't, that's fine. This is a good example where you kind of have to be a little creative. It just had, MSWDS, so, you have to kind of be creative, like, okay, well, how do I want it to look like? Well, I want the checkboxes to be on the left. You could have made it right. I mean, that's part of the flexibility of having type of forms versus circling it. So you want everything that can be indicated to be indicated. If you do something like this, make sure it's consistent throughout the entire form. So for example, marriage status, checkbox is to the immediate left of each option. School completed. The option is again to the immediate left of each option. If you want to make it to the right, then you need to make all of them to the right. So for example, you see how it says up here, do you drink alcohol? No, yes. Again, it's to the immediate left. And we do this because you can see here, that's how the form was initially developed. So you want to have the consistency, otherwise you're going to have to flip it. So from a logical standpoint, it will make more sense. And as you can see, everything seems to be shaded. Some of the boxes probably need to be moved. My recommendation is get the boxes in, then go back and do your formatting and make sure it looks, all nice and pretty. So that's how you would actually do that. I'm going to go over one more example. That's this one here. So this example, I just wanted to point out just because there is a lot of boxes, and that's not super great because that's a lot of work we have to do. So what I'll recommend in this situation is I'll click on Edit again. There are no forms. Yes, no, I know. Click OK. And you can see the patient name and date, and it should be fine. I always like to check at least the first box to make sure it looks okay. You never know. Auto health data account, okay, looks good. No borders, no color, great. Same thing for the date, part of the same, yep, same. Now I like to always go over the entire form, make sure there's nothing missing. Okay, so this is just a straight like card schedule basically, where you just gotta click on it and then you're good to go. So in this situation, I'm gonna add a checkbox, add it here, Sometimes using a mouse is probably better. Okay. Another checkbox. And then another checkbox. And another checkbox. So it's thinking. And we'll add one more checkbox just to complete the group. Okay. So now what you have to do then is you notice that I have 4 checkboxes, and now I have to do that. What is that? 6. We got to do it a lot more times. You know, so what you could do is you could do something like this. There. Control C, and you can press Control V. Before we do that, let's just make sure it's make it a little larger. Only because I think the alignment is not quite where I want it. See how the tips of the diamond are showing through? You want to...
Yeah.
So now that, once you're happy with the alignment, a little off. But once you're happy with the alignment in general and it looks good enough, because you don't have the borders, but you have an opaque, just make sure it's opaque. Yeah, opaque background. They're not going to see the diamond, so they're not going to realize that there's any alignment issues. So you're going to click that, Control C, Control V. And that's going to put everything together as a group. Move it up. And you can see where it is now, which is nice. So instead of repeating, making 4 boxes again and again and again, you now have this, which is...
So how do I do that again?
So we'll do it again. So you press Control C, and now we're going to press Control V. And when you press Control V from the paste, it's going to show up typically in the middle of the view, which is what you have here. And then you move it to where you want, and then you're good to go. So before we keep going throughout, let's just make sure that it's doing what we say. Now, keep in mind from what we talked about prior, you can see here that each checkbox looks like there's different values, but I don't think that's quite true. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I click here, question is, will it click for everything else? Yes, it does. Because although the name looks slightly different, anything with a pound sign afterwards basically means it's a copy of it. So remember how I mentioned that you need to change the name of it? Well, we got to change the name of each of these. So your first batch can stay the same, but you see here how it says number 1, number 2. These need to be changed. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either go here and you can actually change it literally. So under general, under name, maybe you want to call it 2, because this is number 2. And then you click here, you rename it again, properties, checkbox 2. So anything with a 2 at the end is for question 2. Doing that.
Oh,
More. So this can get kind of tedious, but that's okay.
That's okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, so that will only be for those, that'll just be for those in the, like the second line, the third line, the fourth line.
Right. So now let me close and I'll show you what happens. Now.
But you've already got the other number there, like in checkbox 1, and then you put a
right. So now,
checkbox, so that doesn't matter. It doesn't read it as 12.
Right. So you can see here, I only changed line 2, but not line 3. So if I click it, you can see that line 2 is not independent. I can do whatever, and it's going to be fine. See? So line 2 now is completely independent of line 1. But line 3, I didn't change the logic yet, so you can see it goes back and forth. I can click here, and it has to match.
Right.
So that's why these forms are super important, that you need to go back and always check to make sure that your logic is correct. So going back, we click edit. The other way, so over here you can see what I did. So this is the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the second 4, checkbox 72, 82, 92, 1002. Now here, you can notice that line 3 is checkbox 7, number 1. That's this right here. See how I clicked it and it showed up here? That's good. You can right click here and you can rename it as well. You see how it says Control I? You can change it here and then let's say call 3. And then you can name it 3. and you can name it 3. You see how, like, because I'm in this menu box, I'm able to, like, just click enter, and then 3. Enter, and then, well, I'm not going to put that, I'm done with that. But you can see now, I just by clicking on it, and then right-click properties or Control-I, and just by tapping enter, it's going to, like, go. So I changed all of them, so line 3 now has that 3 suffix. I'm going to click close from editing. And now what should happen is I click this, and nothing else should click. I can click this independently, nothing should click. I click this independently, nothing else should click. So now I create a logic that it's going to go throughout the entire thing. So I just have to copy and paste it 3 more times, and now this section is done. And then repeat it. So let's go down to the next section. This section has, let me move it a little bit to the side, has 4. So you can repeat it again, and you can have the same logic. It doesn't matter that's a different section, just keep repeating it because the logic doesn't care. This one has 5 boxes. So I would recommend, because it's a 5-word, I would create a whole new set. And in theory, you could put the 4 here and then add another set and then do it that way. But keep in mind though, the logic, and in my head at least, again, my opinion, because in here I put line 1, 2, 3, it was easier for me to learn that. Now for this, because this is kind of resetting at number 1, you could actually put in another set of checkboxes here and then label it, like, say, instead of 1, you can label 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So then now you may easily, that separation in your head of, okay, I'm going to add, instead of 1 number at the end, I'm going to add 2 numbers at the end. And then you repeat that for 11 times. And then you should be, good to go. So that's how you would actually create this. And then once you have it, then again, you would do something like this. You play around with it, and you'll click it. And you can see here again, I have it set up so you can click multiple things. Now, if you get really technical, you could make the argument that frequency of urination should be a type of question that has 1 answer. You could, but again, the philosophy of filling this form is that you want to give the patient as much flexibility as possible. So then you would go ahead and give them the ability to put not all and maybe greatly. And maybe Dr. Mignalia, the urogyne for this, may say, you said frequency urination, not all, and you said greatly. How come? Perhaps the patient might say, well, during the day, I'm completely fine. But at night, I have a lot more nocturnal urination. Okay, and that may be worthwhile to note versus forcing the patient and use to only click 1 versus the other, or that type of information may not be actually shared. So that's kind of the philosophy, again, of building these type of forms. And again, you just got to complete this, and then once it's done, that'll be it. Any questions?
You are so fast there. You're a fast talker, I think. And I used to live in New York, so that says a lot. You're one of the fastest talkers. I like that you recorded this because honestly, I would have to write all of this down and it would be torture for you because I'd be like, hold on. So I'm glad that this is recorded. I think I'll learn it when I do it.
Yes.
If I can have like a practice sheet to do.
Yeah.
I probably also, when I first started doing this, always do it in the office because I've got my 2 big screens. Mm-hmm. So I can have the Zoom, the video of this running, and while I do this, and I can stop and go back and forth. So I think that's going to be huge. And that's, I think, when my questions are going to come. It looks good. I mean, it looks like something, once I learn it, this is going to be, it's going to go. But it's probably, I'm probably going to have a long learning curve because I don't do this stuff.
Yeah.
I've never done this stuff. So, it's really new to me. It isn't like, it's just like the other Adobe. It's like, no, I don't know what
this only works for Adobe Pro. So if you only have Adobe Reader, you won't be able to do this. Okay. And the other thing for patients to keep in mind is if they do call about this, if they're using Adobe Reader, they're not able to save the results either. So that's the other thing too. So they're going to have to print it out, or they take a screenshot and email it in. One way or another, you do need that new Adobe Pro software to do this.
Okay.
But in principle, just keep in mind that use the auto edit field, put all the fields in as much as you can. As you add checkbox and stuff, it's much easier, in my opinion, to just copy and paste as much as you can and then rename it. And then afterwards, just edit it. Just make sure that the name is correct. And then you click where you're supposed to click. That's going to be fine.
Sure. even know, like, my laptop is a UHP laptop, but I don't even know that it has Adobe Pro on it at home.
Yeah.
I might have to do it here.
Yeah, so if you...
I don't even know if my computer here has Adobe.
I hope it does. Well,
I think, yeah, if it doesn't, I mean, it's easy enough here to just get them.
yeah, so there's a couple of things you can do. If you are working from home and your work computer, your desktop here has Adobe, you can actually ask IT to set up remote desktop. So if you have remote desktop, you can actually remote into your current desktop here from home, use your laptop or whatever else, and then you can actually use your software here remotely. And that's what some of our people do. I think that's what Alan and Brittany do.
Right, right. It's, I think I have it, but it doesn't work for me. I mean, it's really weird. I brought my laptop in a couple of times, and Rob looked at it, and I said, look, my folders are all gone, or they all have X's on, I can't open them. I'm supposed to be able to have the same, and he'll fix it, it'll work for a day, and then it'll revert right back to its weird. So I tend to, know what I can do here and what I can do there.
Yeah.
And work around it. But, I have a feeling that this is going to be, at least in the beginning, probably something I'll want to do here. And I also can get the support here easier than I can at home. So
yeah, definitely. So you guys just keep trying, keep playing around with it. Like I said, anytime you have any field that you want to put in, just click on edit, and then you pick what you want. Typically, either it's going to be a text field or a checkbox. Those are two main things that I've used a lot, and I'm pretty sure you will use it as well.
The text and the checkboxes.
Yeah.
Right. Seems like that's all I'll probably be doing.
Yeah.
But, okay, right now it's a little bit but I think, like I said, once I start playing with it, that's when I'm going to have the questions.
Yeah.
That's probably where I'm going to be like,
Oh, come on. Yeah, so, one thing to keep in mind, always start top to bottom. Because what happens is, let's say you put a checkbox here, and then you get kind of tired, and you start putting checkboxes here. What happens is, Adobe is going to assume that you want it to go in that order. So for the user, when they're in their filling out their mode, hold this real quick. If they're typing and they type test here, if you tab it, you know that it goes to date. So you put like the date. Just put today's date, 9/11. And you put tab, you notice that this can highlight. You can see how it goes through, right? That's on purpose because when I made the checkboxes, which is left to right, I do top, bottom, left to right. So I wanted it so that, let's say someone just wanted to keyboard it, they could just put, enter, tab, enter, tab, delete that, save it to this side. But you can see though that it's easier for them, the user, to then just keep clicking tab than it is for them to like jump all over the place. So it goes. But if you put the checkboxes out of order, let's say you're trying to be fancy or creative and you put it down here, let's say you skip these two lines, then what happens is Adobe thinks that when you click tab here next, it's going to jump to here instead of jumping to here. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you put your checkboxes top to bottom, left to right. It's the same way you read. You don't read back and forth. You read top, bottom, left to right.
Right.
So make sure, when you build these forms, you keep the user in mind. Because, again, what happens is if they click the tab, they're going to be forced to another section, and then you're going to have potentially a place where it's blank. You don't want that.
Yeah. Makes sense. No, I won't get fancy. I promise you that. I'm not going to get creative with this. Learning it as it is going to be a challenge. So, and with me too, it's like the more I do it, of course, like anybody else, I'm really a kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing.
Yeah.
And if I don't do it, if I learn it once and then don't do it for a long time, that'll be like, a real learning experience again. But once I've got it, once I'm doing it on a regular basis, it'll stick.
Yeah. Yeah, so just definitely do it top to bottom. The other thing I would recommend is, a lot of times we're into branding. I would make sure that all my branding, everything looks tight before making the form fillable. Because you could theoretically put more stuff on here, but in my experience, it's a pain. So let's say you create this, but you don't have the top banner here. You're going to have to then have this PDF, save it, import the image, overlay it, resave it, and then upload it that way. So you really want your template to be done, solid, then add the form. Because if you do it the opposite way, there's a lot more editing on the back side, and it could also mess up with your format. Okay. All right. right, so as a continuation, I've gone ahead and I made the top half of the form over here, and you can see I just copy and paste, and you can see here I've made all my numbers here. So a quick little trick that may be useful as you get more advanced and more confident is you can go ahead and create not just one row at a time, but 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. And the way you do that is you can go ahead and copy this, Control C, and then you can press Control V, and then you can scroll all the way down. And as you can see, it makes new checkboxes. You then will go ahead and rename them for purposes of just enumeration. I just went ahead and do that. So I did this for these 4 columns, and now I'm going to do the same thing for these 5 columns. So just as we did before, we're going to click on Add New Field, click checkbox, and we're going to go ahead and size it right. I like to use these guidelines over here, these crosshairs, to make sure I have a perfect align. Click OK. I'm actually going to leave them as checkbox 1 for now, because over here you notice that I don't have any checkboxes named 1, 2, 3, or 4. So that will be helpful. And I'm going to go ahead and click again, another checkbox, again using the crosshairs. I want to make it perfectly aligned. When you do it this way, you're then going to assure that your checkboxes are parallel to each other, or instead of inconsistent, which can be aesthetically displeasing. So go ahead and do the 3rd one. Go to the 4th one. And we'll do a 5th one right now. Okay. And once you're satisfied with how they're centered and how they look, you can then use them for every single row. What I mean by that, I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. So I just left click, highlight, Control C, that's going to copy it for me. Once you're happy with how it looks, you press Control V, which is a shortcut to paste. And when you can see that these are translucent boxes, so you can cover them over the diamond or wherever and let go, and they show up to your right over here, highlighted. So you can see I have these boxes and these boxes. So as I go through, I'm going to go ahead and number them all at once. Again, if I left them, as soon as you click on one, the other one will correspond and hit it. Now, when I was referring to earlier about copying more than one row, you can actually not do this. Control C. Now, this only works if your spacing between the rows are the same. So, yeah, now it's not the same, so we can't do that. But what we can do is we can do it again for subsequent rows where the rows are the same spacing. So let me show you that right now. Let's go ahead and put this here. Now you notice that these 2 are the same spacing as these 2. So I could do this, Control C, and then Control V, and move it right over here. So now I've made 2 more rows without having to click. Now, if I want to get fancy, I can see these 3 are the same spaces. So I'm just going to do these last 3 rows. Control C again, Control V, and let's move it right over here. So that makes us more efficient, and that's fun. It looks like this is a separate row with a different unique spacing. You could theoretically just do every single row, but I find that this is faster versus trying to have to make every single row. Okay, so I just copied and made a row here, and since this is a 2 roller, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Control C, and again Control V, and now you can see what I did here. I just went ahead and I did. So in about half the clicks, I went ahead and do it. Now let me show you how I'm going to rename them. So once you're happy with the boxes look, if they're crooked or not, now it's time to fix them. Let's say you want to fix this, the alignment's not as good as you'd like. You want it like this, however you want to do it. Once you're happy, then you can go ahead and renumber them. I have to click on this box since this is where I started. You can see here. So the first box probably don't need to change, but I like to just to make sure, I'm going to press my shortcut key is F2, and then you can label it something. So I did 128, you can do 129, you can do 130. I would do 130 just because for me it's easier to maintain. You can then press enter, it goes to the next one automatically. You can see here that my tab order, I did it by rows, so it's going to show the row top to bottom, left to right. The by columns, it'll be left to right. So it'll be all the bottom, always, then usual, then sometimes, then seldom, then never. So just make sure you do that correctly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in. So you can see 130. I go ahead and do 131. And then when you press enter again, you press F2. Now you could actually, if you really want to, you actually don't even need a checkbox there. So let me show you what I mean by that. You can just get rid of it altogether, put 130, and then F2, 131, F2, 133, F2, enter 134, F2, 135. You can see how easy that was. I don't have to mess with the checkbox anymore, and you just keep going down. Okay, so I just did the first couple rows, and I'm just going to just check to make sure they look okay, because once you get on a row and then you have to go back and change it, it's really difficult, because you may need to renumber everything if you want the tabular order to be correct and you want it to be aesthetically pleasing as well. So you can see here from 130 to 140, I have all 10 rows, it looks correct. I'm just going to keep going then. Okay, you can see sort of what's happening here. Because I'm just using numbers, it's easy to see where I'm at, 130, 131. Versus over here, you can see that CH means checkbox. So this may be a little easier for you. So it depends on how many checkboxes you're doing. For me, I'm doing a lot of checkboxes, so this is just much faster. You can see now in a matter of, what, a minute or so, I was able to finish all this. I'm just going to keep finishing up 121. Okay. So you can see I finished it all up. Let me just walk you recap one more time. We start from 130. I just changed it from checkbox 120, 130 to just 130, just so I can see it. I went through it, 130 all the way down to 194. You can see numerically what I did here, and it just makes it a lot easier. So when the customer or the end user clicks tab, it's just going to go ahead and click right on through. So that's it. So at the very end, there's a couple more boxes here, which we're not going to fill out because these are boxes that are, it looks like it's there already. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, just like it matches the format. So you can see here, sometimes Adobe tries to figure out what you want. The diamond is the same, but because of the spacing, it actually shrank the checkbox. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, like so. And now it's going to be much more matchy. Now, you could do this a la carte, so you can just take this, move it, and push it through, and then you have to re-enable this. So this, for me, because it's only a handful, it's probably easier to do it this way than it is for me to redo the entire row, copy and paste it, put it here, and then reformat it. But the good thing about Adobe is you have the flexibility to make that judgment call. You can also just do it here and make it larger. Now, if this is too small for you, let's see that it's kind of small, hard to see, perhaps just make it a little larger. So right now I have 300%, you can go to 400%, and that makes it a lot cleaner. So you could even get really, really detailed with this. and make it as large or as small as you want, just for revision purposes. My tip also is if you can't quite get it to go on the first try, just be patient and just do it again. See, I had to take 2 or 3 clicks for that. And then if you can't see the other side, you can just shrink it a little bit, click on here, and you can again just make it large like that. You need an eye. Okay, so now that we got that straightened out, let's go ahead and make it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close form now, and let's just take a quick look and see what we did. All at the top. So again, we have our test patient, our date. We have our checkboxes. We're just going to, just check to make sure they work okay. They work fine, looks like. When you save this, obviously you want to uncheck everything so that way the end user doesn't accidentally assume that that's what you wanted, or worse yet, you get incorrect data. So for example, if I left it moderately and they did not read carefully and they just left it there because they thought they answered it, that could be problematic later on. I did that section, and now let's do this section. This is make sure spot check, looks okay. Now this is an interesting situation where if you think the format might be wrong, you can go back and edit it, and you can move rows up or down. We did copy and paste en masse, so there is a chance that it doesn't look as clean because of the spacing off, just even by a little. It does prove problematic. So let me go ahead and close the form, and I'm going to move it this way so you can see what I mean. There's little peaks over here, so I'm going to go ahead and just edit that just ever so slightly. Let me just move the arrow over. So let me make it a little larger too, so you can see what I mean. And this is where you have to have an eye for detail, as well as really want it to be flush. If this is going to the public, you probably should check it. Okay, so you can see little peaks here. Let's go ahead and you can click on the individual ones, or you can click on multiple ones. So if you know, for example, you can see this peak is only here, and I need to move them up. What I'll recommend is I'll just highlight these 3, and I'll just push the arrow key up until I'm happy with it. That looks good. We'll do it one more time for this one. It's a little uneven, but I think 1 click should do it. Yeah. So, and if you want to do more than 1 and you don't want to highlight it, you can just press Control, and then they'll select the other one. If you want to do a whole row, it will obviously highlight, or you can click 1 and then click another one and press Shift, and that'll highlight a row as well. So after you're satisfied with the alignment and whatnot, you can also then go to View. You can zoom. You can actually see 2 pages scrolling. So let's say this is 2 pages. You'll be able to see the other page here just from a format standpoint. You can also view. To change it back, you just click on single page view, which is what I have here. And so another trick you can do if you want to make sure it's really, really well aligned, you can click under View, you can click under Show Hide. There's navigation panes, toolbars, menu bars, rulers, and grids. You can do that. Snap to grid, and you can put rulers as well. And then you can also here. Let's see if I can show grids. There we go. So if your paper is actually aligned to a grid, for example, this may help. If it's not, like in this case, it's kind of not quite aligned, then that may not help as well. But so in this situation, let's go ahead and edit the field. And so, for example, you could move. So, for example, if you wanted to, you can move it according to the line like that versus just leaving it freehand like that. You notice that it's not letting me. It's not letting me move it wherever I want. That's because I just snapped to grid. So if you're creating your own form and it happens to align perfectly, that's helpful. But if it's not, you go to show hide, and then again rules grids, and then you unclick snap to grid. Then that'll give you the flexibility. You can also do this as well. So here we're just trying to make it flush to align. So and again, this depends. So you can see the spacing. So, maybe you want to move it over a little bit like that. And again, you can make it large, just so you can see it. So hopefully that has helped. We save this. So we save it, and hopefully that has helped everyone complete the form in a timely manner. Any questions, please let me know. Thank you.